Welcome back to In Focus. Nearly 3,600 children die in Kenya each year from malaria. But Kenya's multi-faceted strategy to combat the mosquito-borne disease is yielding results. I recently visited the Kenya Medical Research Institute, where the effective treatment of the disease is being studied. The Kenya Medical Research Institute, located on the outskirts of Nairobi, is reporting a drop in serious cases of malaria in the country from about 30% to 20% or less in outpatient clinics. Dr. Shaba Omar, the principal research officer at the Institute's Malaria Control Unit, says the pattern of endemic malaria infections is changing in most parts of the country.
We are having a lot of control efforts that have been undertaken to manage integrated use of mosquito nets, very good use of the current anti-malarial drugs, which is the artemisinin-based combinations, and the indoor residual spraying in the highlands of Kenya that have actually impacted a lot in terms of the disease burden in the country.
The current anti-malaria drugs, which are subsidized by the government, are affordable to most Kenyans and remain effective in treating the disease.
The worrying trend right now on the field is the misuse of the drug, simply because the patients, because of lack of facilities in these very rural health settings, in the absence of confirmed microscopy, you find the clinic or the clinical officer tends to prescribe this drug irrespective of confirmed diagnosis. That's our biggest challenge. That is our biggest challenge, and because of that, the government is also introducing the rapid diagnostic test kits.
In communities throughout the country, the use of traditional herbal remedies for treating malaria is common. Over the years, the KEMRI has conducted scientific studies into these indigenous remedies with varying results. Dr. Omar says the studies are ongoing and they see a lot of potential.
We have done many studies, plants from the Masai region, from Meru, from Mombasa, from Kilifi. They are all well documented, and at least some of them have come up to be very potential in terms of being applicable for products for treatment of malaria. The thing with the current trend now is that these drugs have to be used as crude, or simply because they somehow have an inbuilt synergistic properties to kill the parasites, as opposed to conventional drugs where you have only one line, like for example chloroquine. It's not a pure compound, but a combination of drugs within as a natural product. Because of that, there is a lot of potential in KEMRI itself coming up with so much. They have an inventory of all these potential products, and I'm very hopeful with the production unit that we've recently was commissioned. These products will be now taken up through that and maybe approach industrialists or manufacturers to help take them to further for application.
While some of the herbal remedies have been found to treat malaria, they have not met the internationally accepted efficiency levels. Dr. Omar decries the lack of sufficient funding for research in African countries, which is undermining efforts to build local research capacity.
Mostly in Africa, we adopt what is there in the US or in Europe, and we come and repeat the same. Most of the basic research is done in the northern part of the world. And in the southern part of the world, we apply it and try and understand it. But I would like rather to see the trend change, whereby this hardcore basic research also comes from Africa. That's my biggest challenge. And that can only come from serious funding allocation.
Now, one of the young scientists conducting research at KEMRI is Francis Kimani, a PhD student and research officer. He takes us through some of the experiments taking place in the malaria laboratory.
In this section, we've also been developing products that can help us in what we're doing and even other researchers. And we've come up with a product we're calling ChemTac. ChemTac is an enzyme that is useful in molecular diagnosis and any other molecular procedures in any other disease other than malaria, and it's come handy in many labs. So we in the process of commercializing the product. So these are tools that are meant to help in molecular kind of experiments. So what you have on this bench is what you call an electrophoresis power pack. It's meant, it's useful when you're looking at some genes, some specific genotypes. So after you do you get your samples from the patients, you do what you call DNA isolation, you amplify genes, then you want to seed them and see how your population is in terms of its genetic makeup, if it's diagnosis, we want to see if it's, for example, when you're doing malaria diagnosis, we want to see whether there are cases of mixed infection, reinfection and all that. These are tools that will come in hand in doing those procedures. And after you do this procedure, you get to this point. This is an equipment that helps you to visualize what you've done in this stage. Okay, so once you load your products from this step to this machine, it will help you see the results visually. A good example is like if my data is somewhere there, like an example, I'll now be able to have the system pick the results, and they're processed. I may do some few fine editing. Then once I'm satisfied with everything, I can now get a printout of what is happening. And there it goes to get me a hard copy of what is on display in the monitor. So this is another critical stage. Here we have some of the key equipment when it comes to any molecular diagnosis laboratory. Pretty small equipment, but very powerful. So we'll have our patient samples here with me, and this, after a series of processing, you bring them over to the machine. You just load them on a special tray, and then you program the machine. It has inbuilt programs, or you can input your programs depending on the specific work that you're doing. Then get the system in place, lock in a proper way. That can't accept it for now, and then you run the program, and then it will do all the experimental work as described. All right. So basically, each of these tube represents a patient, a specific, well-defined, characterized patient. Just awaiting, the investigation at hand.
Kenya's malaria research is also being conducted in Kilifi, Kericho and Kisumu regions with the highest concentration of cases.